How are you all doing? I almost didn't make it this time. I'm going to talk a little bit about my family throughout this presentation, but my wife, we moved an apartment last week. She did like this little turn, and she had it. Anyone had something which is called pinched nerve? Everybody goes like, yeah. So basically what happened is I had to take care of, I have already like 2 kids, and for last week I had like 3 kids in the house, including my wife. And I got a taste of what it is to be a mom, which was really, really super hard. So I'm happy to be here with all of you, and let's start. This talk is called Emotions in Motion. As I told you, my name is Alon, last name Chitayat, but everything that I create on the web is under the name Animishmish, which stands for animation, but also Mishmish means apricot in Hebrew, also Arabic. And that used to be my nickname as a kid. And it became the name of my studio back when I was still living in Tel Aviv. Now I'm based in New York. And for the past few months, I've been doing motion design for years, but I'm full-time senior UX and motion designer at Google, New York. And I want to show you what I'm working on. So this product has been announced, but haven't been launched yet. It's called Chambord. Raise your hand if you heard about it. Raise your hand. Nice. Okay. So for those of you who still don't know what it is, Chambord is a collaborative digital whiteboard, or as the product manager likes to call it, a digital whiteboard on steroids. And it gives you the option to collaborate with people even if you're not sharing the same location. So if you have that. You know what? I'm going to play a video so you could understand what it is instead of just talking about it. Here's a short intro video.
Good ideas can happen anywhere. But the really great ones? Those need room to grow. Meet Chambord, a collaboration space worthy of your ideas. Sketch, drop images, add notes, pull things directly from the web. Just your team in the group, wherever in the world they may be. No margins, no rules. Chambord is designed for the way you think, the way you work. Crafted for performance from the inside out, bringing your team together to unlock their creativity. It all starts here, with a brilliant 4K display. Draw, move, erase. Tools so simple, they just work. No batteries, no charging. Capture the finest details, even when you're working on the big picture. Chambord was born to move. An intuitive plug-and-play design that's ready to go with you, no matter where your inspiration takes you. Any place, anytime. This is a new kind of teamwork, an experience that lets every contributor shine. So nothing gets between your team and their creation. Your old way of expression, reimagined for the way you work today. Chambord, by Google. Let's jam.
The good news is that this one is going to be available for the public soon. The bad news is that I still can't talk about it, which means that all of this presentation is going to be about motion design in general, and hopefully next time I can kind of like go into the details of motion design for Chambord. Just out of sheer curiosity, how many motion designers do we have in the house? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. How many people that work with motion designers? Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about today is how can we use motion design to create emotions for our interface. And this is kind of like just giving you an overview about what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my background and how I got to investigate this. Talking about motion design, just for those of you who don't know what motion design is. Talking about digital facial expressions and digital body language, which are 2 things that I'm really interested in. Let's start with talking about myself and kind of like introducing where I'm coming from. So I grew up with 3 sisters in the house, and I was the youngest one, which meant that there were a lot of emotions in the house. Growing up with like 3 sisters, you learn to talk about your emotion before you learn how to play soccer. And the second thing, which is always kind of like, I'm a designer who likes motion and a motion designer who likes to design, but everything connects to gestures and trying to introduce back human gestures into digital interfaces. So, for example, this is a font that I created, but it's in motion. It's made out of particle systems. And what I'm trying to figure out is how you could introduce back the gestures of the handwriting back into fonts and creating this font which is ever evolving and alive, which is kind of like how I see my handwriting. The second thing that I really like to do is draw, and I draw in motion, meaning that every day on my way to the office and back, I draw people on the subway, on the New York subway. What I like about this is the fact that I'm getting to meet people who are stranger. I never get to talk to them, but I kind of like get to invent imaginary stories for them and trying to guess their emotions and where they're coming from and what they're thinking of. And that project started back in 2005 and evolved into an interactive storytelling platform, which is called Subway Stories. Anyone here was in my talk last year? Maybe? Yeah, some of you? Cool. So I'm not going to talk about it this time. This time is all about motion design, but check it out if you're interested to see more of my drawings. The third thing that I like to do is teach, and I teach at the NYU, at the Interactive Telecommunication program at NYU. And the class that I'm teaching is called Emotions in Motion, which is exactly here. And we're trying to figure out how we could bring in motion into interactive experiences. And what I like the most about it is the fact that motion design is still being developed. And I get to learn from my students in the way they play with motion design, since they are kind of like inventing the present and the future as I see it. So a quick overview for someone who doesn't know what motion design is. That's basically my mom. My mom, every time she loves to tell people that I work for Google, but when they ask her what I actually do, she has no clue. And every time I'm sending her presentations and stuff. So hopefully I can send this video of this presentation next time and explain what it is about. So I want to introduce some of the team members when we're talking about UX team. And the first person that I want to introduce, and I should mention that most of the things, the GIFs that I'm going to show are not my own animations. You get credits at the bottom for all the talented people that created them. So the first person that I want to introduce is the UX designer. And he's the one kind of crafting the overall experience and understanding user flows and creating kind of like a wireframe experience. And he's passing that information to the designer. Now, the designer is in charge of creating those very rough wireframes, which are usually done with Sketch, still static. And she's taking them and she's starting to work on them and creating kind of very detailed pixel perfect designs that are still kind of static. And from the designer, it used to be that she used to pass it to the developer. Now here is where we have the problem, because the designs are static, but the developer is supposed to create something which is interactive. The developer usually doesn't come with any kind of animation background. So a lot of compromises are being made, and this is why developers need and love motion designers. The first reason is because we create motion references. And the first time I started doing motion design for Google was back in 2012. And they brought me in, and this is, again, just as an example. Here are 2 different states for an app. So here is the first one, and here is the second one. And the developer needs to kind of understand and solve how to transition between one state to the other. So by using motion tools. My own tool is usually After Effects. I create these tiny animations that are kind of like motion references for him, and then we can start breaking it down. The button should animate over this and that milliseconds. The curve for that animation is supposed to be with an ease at the beginning and an ease out at the end. And by giving him all the information, the final implementation of the app or any kind of interface is going to be very precise. So the second reason is we're saving time and money for prototyping. Imagine someone is creating this animation and he could start tweaking it and changing it and playing with parameters. But then when it gets to the point where they actually build it, all these kind of like prototyping and tweaking is going to be much harder to change. So this is why also motion designers are good for developers. And the last reason is motion design actually enhances the user experience. And I can give you this example where we have the scrolling, and then the tiny animation is giving you a little bit of extra taste of what this app is about. It's whimsical, it delights the user, and it creates a more personal experience than what you could expect from just scrolling up and down. So I see motion designers as kind of like translators. We take the static design and we translate it into motion. But the best part is that we get to work with everyone. You get insights from each one. Each one explains a little bit better. So the designer would tell you, okay, no, you missed the design over here. And then the UX designer would explain how he sees the interaction. So you get to communicate with everyone, and again, working as a holistic team. So that was kind of like a rough overview of what I do. But my background, again, is animation. I started with doing animation for over a decade. And I was showing this to my daughter last night, and I was asking her, so who are the characters? And she was like, oh, the big one is you, and I'm the small one. I'm like, okay, cool. So how do you know that this one is? So she was like, oh, you're looking down, and you're taking care of me, and you're making sure that I'm okay, and I'm a little bit happy and jumpy. And so just by animating the body, and you see how he twists his little butt over there. I really like that part. Pixar is doing a really good job about animating, bringing to life static objects. And this is what brought me to start with doing animation at the beginning. I thought it was magical. And I want to show you how, when you translate everything that you know from just doing animation into real objects, you can start defining robots which act in the same way. So this is Guy Hoffman, who's a researcher and an artist, and he started creating robots which were inspired by those Pixar's animation. And I want to show you a robot which jams with a rapper. And what I want you to notice is the way they look at each other.
Simple assignment in the first grade. Yeah, choose beat. I can do that. Choose beat. I can do that. Simple assignment in the first grade. Simple as choose beat. Yeah, simple assignment in the first grade.
So basically, the only thing which he's having over there is just this nod, but the nod is connected to the sound. And that kind of like gives you a feeling that that thing is alive. And when he's looking at the other, just like basically just turning that ball into the face of the rapper, he's looking back. And I think that's very strong and powerful. How many of you watch Humans? Is Humans big here in Canada? Yeah? I love that show. And I think it's brilliant because the sci-fi is very subtle. The way they made this whole TV show is very subtle. And if you're not familiar with the TV show, it kind of like in general, it talks about the relationship between humans and synthetics, which are humanoids or or robots that look like humans, and the whole interaction between them and how they conceive them as if they're human or not, if they're a machine, if they have feeling. And some of them are conscious. So you start watching the show and you're aware that there is a specific group which is conscious. They could feel like humans. They have their own thoughts, and they're not controlled by the people. But then two things kind of like distinct them as far as for how the actors are playing them, in order for you to understand that they are not human. So the first thing is the color of the eyes, but then we have facial expressions, which are very weird and kind of like give you a creepy feeling. And the second thing is body gestures or body language, which is very stiff. And I think between the two, we can start to understand how important it is to use facial expressions and body language for something to look human. I think that this uncanny valley where robots are starting to look too human is where we're kind of like we're criticizing the situation. I think this is easier, right? Watching this, people are watching this video over the web, feeling sorry for the robot, and I think it's easier for us to emphasize with the robot because he doesn't look as human as the other ones. I love watching these. These are so good. Let's watch another one. Okay, watch another one. Robots failing. These are so good, right? So good. So good. The reason why I like watching robots fail is because I think failing is what we do as humans, right? First of all, we kind of like, it gives us the option to look at them and laugh, right? We're better than you. We never fail, but failing is actually very human. I want to show you what happens when we don't have a body to animate and we don't have a face to animate. So the selection of the song is very specific, huh? And we don't have a body. Just basically have this very simple setup. It's a screen. We don't have a face. It's just a mouth. And even not a mouth, it's just a rectangle animating. But something is so human about the way this robot is reacting. And it's awesome. The second song is even better. Super fun project. Very nice. Okay. So technology is already there, right? We know how to sense emotions. This is an app by Sitecorp. This is me kind of like trying to figure out how their face tracking algorithm works. And it's very precise as far as for understanding my facial expressions. We have wearables which measure your pulse or how much you sweat or your heat and could translate it into insights about your emotions. We have other wearables which gives you the option to wear your emotions. So this one lights up, also connecting to your palm, but it lights up according to how you're feeling. We have apps that ask you how you're feeling and then kind of like translate it. We have apps that go over your text and give you a rating of your emotional context. So it's all about context, right? And nonverbal communication is very, very strong, right? We have this rule of 738-55, if you heard about it, where 55% of communicating a specific idea is, when you perceive it as an audience, is about my body language, right? And my tone and how I speak. And then 7% is my actual words. And that's amazing as far as for how much we're using text over interfaces, but how much we're still not using enough the body language, which is so strong in order to convey an idea. So what I want to start with is digital facial expressions. And anyone has an example or could think of what is a digital facial expression? Just shout it out. Yeah, very good. Emojis. So let's look at emojis. And again, the range of facial expressions is as far as for what we could offer as humans is pretty broad. And I want to bring you back to the old days of Facebook. And you would see a post like this, very depressing. And then you would go like, should I like it or not? Is it okay? The cat died. I'm liking the fact that he died, but if I don't like it, am I not supporting her? And that kind of like brought Facebook to introduce reactions. So taking the spectrum of like yes and no, very kind of like a 0 or 1, right? And spreading it out, also animating it, giving us the option to express our emotions in a much broader way. As people start creating like their own versions of that, so an Halloween version or the Pokemon version. But then my favorite one is actually this one, which is a bad drinking night and how you feel right after. No, and this is like more human for me. It's like as far as for, you know. And Google, of course, also offers their own emojis, animated emojis in Allo and Hangouts. And from there, we kind of like move one step further up, which is stickers. And stickers aren't emojis. And the reason why is because they are bringing in a more precise situation. So it's already not, it's not just how am I feeling, but it's also describing a situation that you could share. And people love stickers when we're talking to each other on messaging apps. So this is like, I'm super furious and mad. And this one, what is it? I'm not even sure what it is. Yeah. I was showing it, I was asking my daughter. She was like, she's 4.5. She's like, he's farting. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. People start creating platforms where they sell their stickers. So this one is all about love stickers, and they have a million of them in different options. And then, I don't know if it happens to you. I think it happens to everyone. So my dad is like 78 almost. And he's a very serious guy, and I'm opening Skype a few days ago, and he messaged me this. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is it? What is he trying to say? It's like, I'm not sure. And I'm like calling him. It's like, what is it? He's like, I thought it was cute. And I think this is like basically, so what the point is that this whole audience of people who are seniors or young children, right? My daughter, she doesn't know how to write yet, but she could use stickers in order to express herself. She texts her friends using stickers and emojis, and she could express herself even without knowing how to write. So another example is GIFs. And GIFs could be used in order to, again, kind of like describe situations. But I want to show you something really cool. And this is a GIF robot. This is a thesis project by a fellow researcher at the same program that I'm teaching at NYU, the Interactive Telecommunications program. His name is Abhishek Singh, and he created Pico. And Pico works the same way as Alexa or Google Home. So basically, it's voice commands. You can talk to him, and he reacts. But he reacts, instead of a face, he has a screen, and he reacts. He pulls back GIFs. So this is, if you ask him, hey, Pico, are you having fun? He's like, no. And then this is how Pico dances. So he dances to the Beatles. And this is how Pico gives you like, okay, thumbs up, everything is good. And I think this is a great use of facial expressions. So second stage, we were talking about digital body language. So body language is pretty clear, but what happens, you're animating, each one has like a little bit of a different tempo. It's very easy to express different characters, but when you don't have a body and you're an app, what happens and how can we translate everything that I know as an animator to a body or something which doesn't have a body. A great example. So, right, they don't have a body, but they're totally expressive. It's very clear that each one has a very different character. And I want to show you how we do it using motion design. So in most cases, we're taking human gestures and then translating them into interfaces. So this human gesture expresses what? Shout it out. Okay. Impatience, thinking, waiting for someone. You might recognize it also from your interface. And I think it's this one. Right? So it's the same kind of like rhythm. You're tapping on the table. And this is also me. And my wife is texting me. And I'm like, oh no. The longer I wait, I know that it's going to take so much time. I'm going to bring so much shit home. It's going to take me forever to get home. So this anticipation is probably the word that I would use. Another example, and this is usually what I like. What is motion design? So I give this example. Someone thought about it, right? We're tapping the wrong password into our iPhone. We get this. What is it? No, right? So it's exactly this one, right? No. And I kind of feel that like the second time you do it wrong, or the third time you should get something like this, maybe. But then when you get it right, it's good. Thank you. Yeah. Google is doing the same thing. It's using primitive shapes. In this case, it's the Google dots, and we're using them in order to create the feeling or to describe different gestures. So see how it's the same setup, right? It's the same basic setup, 4 circles, one next to the other, but then the way they move expresses different reactions, different emotions. And this is exactly where motion design in interfaces is creating something which is more than just a static screen. Usually when we're creating, if you think about the motion that your apps have, it's I can give you an example of 2 different personas. First one is Mr. Productive. And Mr. Productive is kind of like, I think about him as my banker, right? So a very serious app. And if we need to describe his motion, it's fast, and it's sharp, and it's snappy, and very organized, and he's classy. And then Mr. Playful. And Mr. Playful is the complete opposite, right? He's bouncy and silly and funny and happy. And when do you use each one? So let's talk about Mr. Playful. And Mr. Playful is a little bit more easy because we could go back to everything that we know about animation, like squash and stretch, and create interfaces which look like this. But if you think about a bank app, let's say, most likely you would not see something like this. And if you, after this presentation, check your personal bank and open the app, you would see that most likely, and this is again what I've tested so far, there is no motion because banks feel that motion is distracting. And so it's really important to understand if you're going one way with like, okay, just trust me with your money, and it's very serious, and everything is going to be very elegant and subtle, or just hug me and, this is like games for kids or apps for kids. Snapchat, so 2 social networks. Snapchat is like doing crazy things with motion, and LinkedIn just introduced motion lately. And in between, we have like all this very, a broad range of different emotions that we could choose from, and we're still not using all of them. We're still not creating, let's say, melancholic interfaces. And I'm not sure you would want something like that, right? If we're talking about Marvin from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's funny for a while. But if you would open your app every day and it would just bum you out, I'm not sure you would want to open it the next day. So I'm not talking about that. But what I am talking about is what we call micro interactions. And micro interactions introduce motion in very specific points. So here's an example for a MailChimp. And when when you launch your campaign, they give you like this tiny animation. Again, it gives you a feeling of the character, of the tone of your app, of the personality behind it. Also kind of rewards you for the action, for the interaction. We're also using user feedback now. So it used to be harder creating tiny animation for apps. Now it's becoming like easier with different tools, also tools that lets you export animations directly from After Effects and implementing them in apps. So we're seeing more and more animated icons. We could see motion used for confirming actions. So again, kind of like a tiny detail that gives you the feeling of this. Now you're waiting, and then okay, everything is okay, and your file has been uploaded. But my favorite part is basically just bringing delight. So it's these small surprises that you get to see in apps. So this is one example, or another example is something like this. And you would also see it sometimes when you open the app for the first time, and you see a warm welcome screen. It will give you kind of like a small animation describing the main feature of the app. But where I see it heading is a little bit like her. So what I'm talking about is personalizing, getting to the point where the emotions which are being reflected back from your app are either going to be personalized. So it's not going to be just a motion designer defining one set of emotions for an app, but the motion would be tailored according to the user. And each user would get to see a very specific app that could react to his emotion. And I think this connection, this point where the emotional feedback, we're sharing so much emotions between us and when we're having conversations, or when we're interacting with our phones, right? We love our phones. I would throw my kid in the air and catch it, but I'm not sure I would do it with my iPhone. So we love our interfaces so much that this emotional impact is very important and strong. The last thing that I want us to do, if you're okay with it, because it's going to be fun, is I want you all to, and I wouldn't do it in New York, New York is too serious, but this is Toronto, and I know the crowd, and I'm asking you nicely. So we're all going to stand up, and I want to do a quick video of all of us. Can we also turn the lights on? Okay, prepare your body, and...
Feels like your body's in.
Ready? Set. Go! Robots! Thank you very, 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 very much. Toronto, you've been beautiful. I'm going to leave you with this one. If you want to follow me, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Vimeo and whatever. I'm always Animation. Thank you very, very, very much for your time and being here with me. It's been awesome. Thank you.